Metroid Dread! Metroid is back, baby, with a new Metroid installment. No weird offshoot Metroid games that aren't really Metroid games. Come on. No, Metroid Dread is legit Metroid 5. I've been addicted to it, been playing it nonstop, and now you all get to hear me talk about my addiction. So let's do it. So Metroid Dread is not only the newest installment of Metroid, it's the latest, chronologically speaking. It's the newest adventure. You know, like, oh, what happened after Metroid Fusion? Now we know, Metroid Dread. And you really do feel like they knew it's been a while, and so they gotta jam-pack this game with enough content to make it feel like, oh, that was worth it. And they did. I mean, you have what you expect from a Metroid game, you know? You have Samus. Samus, of course, loses all the powers, all the abilities, all the power-ups, all the missiles, and so now you gotta go out there and find abilities, find new abilities, regain abilities that you've lost, all in the name of unlocking other areas that you get to. You know, it's Metroidvania. Operative word, Metroidvania. It really is the godfather of the format, or godmother, that is. And when this was announced, I was super pumped, super hyped, because 2D Metroid was my first Metroid love, you know? So whenever there's a 2D Metroid, I get more excited. Not that Metroid Prime 4 I'm not excited for, because we all are when that happens in 2037. But there was a part of me that was like, in Metroid Dread, am I gonna miss the sprites? Am I going to look at the camera here and say, Axiom Verge did it better? Axiom Verge is great, but no, I didn't miss the sprites. I don't feel the need to say that. I thought everything in this game worked very well to maintain that Metroid atmosphere and tone. Metroid's always had sci-fi horror elements, you know? Metroid always reminded me of Aliens. Then Metroid Fusion reminded me of The Thing. It's the thing in space. This maintains the elements of that. Also, a little bit of Terminator in this one, because you have those EMMI bastards coming at you, which add another level, add another layer of depth to this game. They're these sentinel robots you have no way of defeating. You just have to avoid them. Definitely does give you that fight or flight. Nothing quite as personal as a parasite mimicking you, but you know, still gives you that fear and fight or flight. And I loved it, man. Like when you get into that zone, there were so many times I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go back through there. Just tiptoeing like, please don't see me, motherfucker. I actually really enjoyed them. The novelty starts to wear off when they start getting cheap, and that is to say they start acting like Liu Kang from Mortal Kombat. But they're like, where's Samus? Samus is invisible. I have no idea. Maybe she's there. How did you know that? I was being perfectly quiet. How did frustrating moments like that aside, I really did enjoy them. Like I said, not only does it add another layer, but it also lets you know where the new zone is, because this game is enormous. And it doesn't coddle you either. You know, with Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero Mission, some of the other Metroids, it was like, oh, hey, you want to know where to go next? Here, take me by the hand. That is where you go next. Now you know. This game's like Biff. It's like, you want to know where to go next? Figure it out! You're like, okay. Dude, I'm not as young as I used to be. So I'd love to say I was able just to be like, oh, I know where that room was. Let me go right back there with this new ability I have that I know goes right there. It's for that room I saw. Boom. No, I was like, I remember the room. Let me look at the map. Oh God. Well, here we go. Time to start trekking. Is it a tough Metroid game? Yeah, and compared to other Metroid games, it's actually one of the tougher games. I'm not talking like tough, like the original Metroid. You could say the original Metroid is the toughest Metroid game because no map. I mean, that does add to the difficulty right there. Also, though, I feel like the regular enemies in the original Metroid, they were just tougher. This game has tough enemies, but not normie-ass enemies. You run across any normal enemies, you're probably gonna wipe them out. This game has some game mechanics that rolled over from Metroid Samus Returns, like the counter. I love the fact that you have that counter attack. I loved it in Samus Returns. I love it here. I love the fact that they didn't lose that. That was a great addition. I love it when a game's like, yeah, you can counter most anything. Just gotta know when, gotta know the timing. So you might die the first time you run across a normal enemy because maybe you try to counter them, you don't know their movements yet, you don't know when to counter them. Some of them do the thing like, here I fooled you, bam! You know, it's basic counter mechanic enemies. They're gonna do that kind of stuff. But if you do land that counter and kill the enemy on the counter, you get so much life back. I mean, you could be beeping, you know? You have such little life, it's doing the beep, beep, beep thing. You counter, kill, you get so much life, you're back in the game. It's like it never happened. Most of the deaths that will happen to you in this game will come from the bosses. And I shit you not on that one. Like, most bosses hit for a couple of energy tanks, per hit, you know? They hit for a couple hundred. Again, when you start getting the counters down, you start getting their movements down, trial and error, you're gonna die by bosses. But when you figure out how and when to counter them, you get some life back, so that helps. But most of the time, if you do die by a boss, he hits you for so much, you're not even gonna hear the beep. You're not even gonna hear the warning sign of like, oh, you're low on life. And the EMMIs, they'll kill you too, because they're dicks. Metroidvania, baby. It's what it is. I mean, the bosses, though hard, I'm not going to sit there and be like, yeah, it's blasphemous hard, because it never was. I mean, I suppose the bosses are hard when compared to other 2D Metroid bosses. You know, you look at Kraid from Super Metroid, you beat his ass in like 2 seconds in that game. The bosses in here are a little more difficult than that. I do love the fact that this game embraces those secret ways to kill bosses. I've already seen online on YouTube these ways like, you know, you charge up your run and then you run into a boss. I actually did that on one of the bosses. Don't know if that was how I was supposed to kill that boss. Totally throws back to Metroid 2 Return of Samus on Game Boy, where the Metroid Queen, you can turn into the ball, let the queen eat you, and just load her up with bombs in her stomach and blow her to hell from the inside. Or letting the underwater boss in Super Metroid grab you and then using the grapple beam on the electricity to fry his ass. That was a really cool secret Easter egg way to kill the boss. I always appreciated that. And I appreciate the fact that this game does carry that torch. It was fun. I love the fact that Samus has a slide also. She has a slide to get under little narrow passages, which means you don't need the morph ball to do all of those moments. It's good at optimizing. I feel like there are a lot of abilities in this game too. Abilities that you recognize from other Metroid games. Some abilities are new here. That mixed with the gameplay format, story, and general mechanics that I'm trying to be vague about, Metroid Dread works as a throwback and love letter to previous Metroid games that we've all loved, but also most definitely lands as a sequel to Metroid Fusion, which it also needed to be. Little thoughts that I have about the game, like, wish they'd done that. Just they're little things, like with the analog stick. I mean, first of all, I've never felt I've had good control using an analog stick in a Metroid game. I much prefer the D-pad in a game like this, but this does force you to do the analog stick, and a couple times it screwed me. What can I say? But I get why with the aiming and whatnot. It's a thought I have. I will say I don't like how they condensed the missiles. Before in Metroid, you had different missiles, and they did different things with varying degrees of power. In Metroid Dread, you have missiles, and then you get super missiles, and you don't have missiles anymore, which the implication is, well, now their super missiles are a lot stronger. But since you don't have regular missiles and enemies get more difficult, it just feels like you have missiles just called something else. Yeah, sure, I got ice missiles, but I felt like I lost my super missiles. By implication, I think the game is telling me, yeah, but ice missiles are as powerful as super missiles. They never felt that way. It just felt like I lost my super missiles. I prefer Metroid where you can choose the different missiles depending on the situation and circumstance and whatever power you need. But that's probably my biggest gripe about the game, is how they handled the missiles. But in the end, Metroid Dread, I thought it was a home run. It was fantastic. It was a great Metroid 5. Metroid 5 I've waited for 19 years, and it was worth the wait. And it shows that they really wanted you to feel like it was worth the wait. Metroid's a franchise I always feel like Nintendo sleeps on, but it's like, this is one of the greatest franchises they have. Example, in this world of so many collections for the Switch, you got Castlevania collections, Contra collections, more Castlevania collections, a Metroid collection for the Switch. That would be amazing, and I feel like a lot of people would pick that up. Have the original Metroid, Metroid 2 Return of Samus for Game Boy, Super Metroid, Metroid Fusion, Metroid Zero Mission, and in a perfect world, port Samus Returns, the 3DS game, to the Switch. Takes some doing, but you know, it's possible. I feel like in situations like that, these companies are always like, work? Oh. Or Nintendo, if you want to play nice, AM2R was a labor of love. Cut a check for Dr. M64. Get that on there too. What if we never see that Metroid collection that I think they most certainly, definitely, absolutely should do on the Switch? Metroid Dread. It's a great game. If you're a Metroid fan, you've been looking for a new side-scroller Metroid, odds are you've already played this. Metroid Dread was a great Metroidvania adventure in an interesting world with very well-crafted level design, great weapons, but most of all, if you're going to hit me in the Metroid feels, it had great tone with a solid, eerie soundtrack that really hit that home. And Metroid Dread is awesome-tacular. Also, getting some of these secrets and some of these hidden missiles, hidden energy tanks, man. The worst is when you see it. Like, you know what you have to do, but gaining the muscle memory to pull it off, very different thing. You'll run into that on more than a few occasions in here, and in that, it's getting some of the items in here is the toughest I've ever seen in a 2D Metroid game. All right, so Metroid Dread, have you played it? What did you think about it? What's your favorite Metroid game? For me, it's always gonna be Super Metroid. It just always will. Part nostalgia, part execution, but the atmosphere and tone in that game is just top notch. They make a Metroid movie. That's the tone I'd love to see on screen. But whatever it is, whatever you think, comment below, let me know. And as always, if you like what you've seen here and you want to see more, click right here to see more.